Coronation Day, June the 22nd, 1911. George V, by the grace of God, King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, and of the British dominions beyond the seas, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. The new reign has opened with a constitutional crisis. The House of Commons is debating the government's bill to curb the power of the Lords.
I ask this House to declare that in the sphere of legislation, the power of veto at present possessed by the House of Lords shall be so limited in its exercise as to secure the predominance of the deliberate and considered will of this House within the lifetime of a single Parliament. The method the government proposes is the limitation of the veto.
Mr. Asquith, the Prime Minister, heads a Liberal government. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is Mr. Lloyd George, and Mr. Winston Churchill is Home Secretary. On the other side of the House, the Conservatives, usually called Unionists because of their opposition to Home Rule for Ireland, are resolutely opposed to any attempt to interfere with the Constitution. Before the end of the year, they will have a new leader, Mr. Bonar Law. Also sitting on the opposition front bench is a famous advocate, Sir Edward Carson, KC, Solicitor General in the last Conservative government and leader of the Irish Unionist Party. The Liberals have not got an overall majority in the House. They therefore need the support of Mr. John Redmond's Irish Nationalist Party. And in return for their 85 votes, Mr. Asquith has given a pledge.
When the constitutional ground has been cleared, one of the first acts of the Liberal Party will be to promote legislation to grant Home Rule for Ireland.
In the past, the permanent Unionist majority in the House of Lords has always been an insuperable obstacle to Home Rule. But now, when the Parliament Act becomes law, it will be practical politics at last. King Henry, Mr. Redmond, relies on his dear Cardinal, Mr. Asquith, to push through that little matter of the state divorce with the least possible delay. But not all Irishmen want Home Rule by any means. In Ulster, they'll have none of it. Belfast, September 23rd, 1911. 50,000 Unionists gather at Curragh to acclaim the man they have chosen as their leader, Sir Edward Carson.
I know the responsibility you are putting on me today. In your presence, I cheerfully accept it, grave as it is. And I now enter into a compact with you. Together, we will yet defeat the most nefarious conspiracy that has ever been hatched against a free people.
Throughout Ulster, the free people prepare to resist. Men of the Orange Lodges and Unionist clubs band together to drill and practice military exercises. Their purpose, they explain, is to maintain the Constitution of the United Kingdom as now established, and to protect their rights and liberties thereunder. But in England, no one takes these preparations very seriously, least of all the government.
We must not attach too much importance to the frothings of Sir Edward Carson. I dare say, when the worst comes to the worst, we shall find that civil war evaporates in uncivil words.
Not long after, Mr. Churchill has reason to think again. The Times reports,
"From the moment of his landing at Larne, he was met by striking evidence of profound hostility. Ulster has successfully made her protest against the notion of the government that her hostility to Home Rule is mere bluff."
2 months later, on Easter Monday, Mr. Bonar Law, the new leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party, gets a very different reception.
You must trust in yourselves. And when the crisis is over, men will say to you, you have saved yourselves by your exertions and the empire by your example.
2 days after, the Home Rule Bill comes before the House of Commons for the first time.
Many will agree with me that more ridiculous or fantastic proposals than those outlined by the Prime Minister have never been put before this or any other Parliament.
We will not admit the right of a small minority of the people to veto the verdict of the vast body of their countrymen.
Where is the precedent in the whole of history for a parliament turning out a community who are satisfied to stay under their rule?
The members opposite endeavor to overwhelm the issue by personal attacks and irritating references to the nationality and cherished aspirations of the Irish people.
There is no one on this side of the House who does not believe that this bill would never have come before the House if the right honourable gentleman had not been dependent on the Irish vote.
Later, in July, at a great unionist rally at Blenheim, Bonar Law is even more emphatic.
I can imagine no length of resistance to which Ulster can go in which I would not be prepared to support them, and in which, in my belief, they would not be supported by the overwhelming majority of the British people.
For the moment, though, the pen is mightier than the sword. A solemn covenant has been drawn up, by which men of Ulster may bind themselves to one another, to resist the imposition of Home Rule. Sir Edward Carson makes a progress through Ulster to commend the covenant to his supporters.
How many hours have I thought over this covenant? How many times have I thought of what it may mean to all we care about here? Does any man believe I lightly took this matter in hand? No. It is the gravest matter that I have ever had to consider. But the more I consider it, the more I believe it to be right.
The 28th of September, 1912, Ulster Day. In Belfast, and in all the towns of the province, the people gather to pledge themselves. Along the corridors of the City Hall, the Covenant awaits them.
Being convinced in our consciences that Home Rule would be disastrous to the material well-being of Ulster, as well as the whole of Ireland, subversive of our civil and religious freedom, destructive of our citizenship, and perilous to the unity of the Empire, we, whose names are underwritten, men of Ulster, loyal subjects of His Gracious Majesty King George V, humbly relying on the God whom our fathers in days of stress and trial confidently trusted, do hereby pledge ourselves in solemn covenant throughout this our time of threatened calamity to stand by one another in defending for ourselves and our children our cherished position of equal citizenship in the United Kingdom, and in using all means which may be found necessary to defeat the present conspiracy to set up a Home Rule Parliament in Ireland. And in the event of such a Parliament being forced upon us, we further solemnly and mutually pledge ourselves to refuse to recognize its authority. In sure confidence that God will defend the right, we hereto subscribe our names.
On this day in Belfast alone, 80,000 people sign their names to this covenant, and in all, there will be nearly 500,000 signatures. At Westminster, the government is cutting discussion of the bill short.
The drastic closure of the government shows how wise we are in Ulster to put no faith in them.
Those who talk of revolutions ought to be prepared for the guillotine.
January the 16th, 1913. The bill passes the Commons. Now it will go to the Lords. The Times notes,
The debate throws into strong relief the complete detachment of the country at large. Only in Ulster have there been any signs of serious interest.
in February, the Lords reject the bill. And in Ulster, the local bands begin to combine to form the Ulster Volunteer Force. In July, the Lords reject the bill for the second time. They have no further power of veto. In Ulster, plans for resistance are well advanced. A retired officer of the Indian Army, General Sir George Richardson, KCB, is appointed to command the volunteer force, and a provisional government is formed to take over if and when Home Rule becomes law.
They may tell us, if they like, that this is treason. We are prepared to take the consequences.
On September the 26th, 1913, a year after the signing of the Covenant, the Belfast division of the Ulster Volunteer Force is reviewed by Sir Edward Carson and their newly appointed general.
£10,000 spent on rifles would be 1,000 times stronger as an argument than the same amount spent on meetings, speeches and pamphlets.
By the end of the year, the government is becoming seriously concerned. In December, a royal proclamation prohibits the importation of arms into Ireland. Capital idea this of stopping importation of arms. Now there's a dangerous character. You should search him. That's just the sort of bag he'd have a couple of howitzers concealed in. The king, being greatly concerned with the divisions of his people, turns to Mr. Asquith.
My dear Prime Minister, I have for some time been very anxious about the Irish Home Rule Bill, and especially with regard to Ulster. I cannot help feeling that the government is drifting and taking me with it. Would it not be possible to secure a settlement by consent?
Our proposals are put forward as the price of peace. Any county in the province of Ulster is to be excluded from the operation of the bill for 6 years if a bare majority of the electors vote in favour of exclusion.
Irish nationalists can never be assenting parties to the mutilation of the Irish nation. Ireland is a unit.
So far as Ulster is concerned, we do not want sentence of death with a stay of execution for 6 years.
If this is rejected, it is the government's duty to suppress any movement that might arise to overawe Parliament or subvert the law by the menace of force.
I appeal from the government to the country. I say to the country, are you going to allow the forces of the Crown, which are your forces, to be used to coerce men who have asked nothing, but that they should remain with you?
At this moment, in fact, the government is planning to move troops into Ulster. The Army Council warns Sir Arthur Paget, C&C Ireland, that evil-disposed persons may attempt to gain possession of arms and ammunition from army depots, and orders him to move troops north to reinforce the guards on these depots. Warships appear in Belfast Lough, and for a few hours, the air is full of rumours that the government will use force against Ulster.
I found Belfast and surrounds very excited. I imagine the government were under the impression our people were going to take action, or it may be they desire to provoke an outbreak.
But on March the 20th, 1914, an unprecedented event takes place. Telegram from Sir Arthur Paget, C&C Ireland, to Secretary of State for War.
Regret to report, Brigadier and 57 officers, 3rd Cavalry Brigade, prefer to accept dismissal, if ordered north.
Midnight, March the 20th. Telegram from Colonel Seeley MP, Secretary of State for War, to C&C Ireland.
You have authority of Army Council to suspend from duty any senior officers who have tendered their resignations or in any other manner disputed your authority. Direct Gough and officers commanding 5th and 16th Lancers to report themselves to the Adjutant General at the War Office without delay.
At 11:15, I went in to Sir John French. He began by saying he was my old friend and chief, and wished to be trusted and to be believed when he said there had been a great misunderstanding. Sir John was very suave in his manner, I very stiff. I at once said, "There has been no misunderstanding on my part, sir." Sir John continued, "As there has been misunderstanding, you are all to return to your commands as if nothing had happened." I said, "I am quite willing to do that, but such a grave crisis has arisen that neither I nor the officers can return unless we receive a definite assurance that we shall not be asked again to enforce on Ulster the present Home Rule Bill."
At about this time, a small coaster, the Fanny, sails from Hamburg. Her cargo is rifles.
We arrived in Larne about 10:30 p.m. The harbour was brilliantly lighted, but we had difficulty in getting alongside and did not succeed for almost an hour. Number 2 hold was opened and the arms were landed on the wharf. As each crane load was landed, a motor car came along quietly, gathered as many bundles as it would hold, and then drove off rapidly in the darkness to its destination.
It is a grave and unprecedented outrage. His Majesty's government will take appropriate steps to vindicate the authority of the law.
In May, the Commons approved the Home Rule Bill for the third time. Now, it only needs the royal assent. Uneasily, both sides face the uncertain future. On the 12th of July, at the Orange Day celebrations, Sir Edward Carson speaks in Belfast.
I see no hopes of peace. We must be ready. The great crisis of our fate and the fate of our country cannot be delayed for many weeks. Unless something happens, we shall have once more to assert the manhood of our race.
Unless something happens. On July the 24th, 1914, the Cabinet meets. Ireland is the subject they are discussing. And just as their long debate is reaching its inconclusive end, a document arrives from the Foreign Office for Sir Edward Grey. In quiet, solemn tones, he begins to read the contents. It is the Austrian ultimatum to Serbia, following the assassination of the Archduke and his wife.
In the words of Winston Churchill,
it was an ultimatum which had seldom been penned in modern times. As the reading proceeded, it seemed absolutely impossible that any state in the world could accept it, or that any acceptance, however abject, would satisfy the aggressor. The parishes of Fermanagh and Tyrone faded back into the mists and squalls of Ireland, and a strange light began to fall and grow upon the map of Europe.
When war came, the Ulster Volunteer Force formed the core of the 36th Ulster Division, which won great honor in France. In the only way they could, these men proved true to the covenant they had signed, pledging themselves to defend their cherished position of equal citizenship in the United Kingdom. "50 years on, the City Hall in Belfast, where once men gathered in their thousands to sign the covenant, stands today at the center of a busy and progressive community. This corner of the British Isles, where the UVF men once marched in defense of their constitutional rights and liberties, has become a land of modern factories and thriving farms, a land which is building for the future. And on the hill beyond the statue of their great leader, the Union Jack still flies over Ulster. This is the true memorial to Carson and the men of 1912, that to this day, Northern Ireland remains part of the United Kingdom.